I would love to welcome to the stage Alex Rosen, a director at GoDaddy Venture Forward. And Alex, please come on up.
Okay, I'll be back in a little bit. Thank you, Liz. So excited to be here. Let's get started. All right, so I'll be talking to you on behalf of GoDaddy and our Venture Forward research initiative about the macro impact, the outsized impact of micro-businesses and how digital entrepreneurs power our local economies. I'm so excited to be here on Innovation Day because this is an innovative way to look at data and use data in support of entrepreneurship. So this is a statement we all know. And that's why we're all here at TENWEST in supporting these entrepreneurs. But without data, maybe that's just a really strong hunch. If we don't know their impact and have the data to show it, how can we best support entrepreneurs? If we don't truly understand them, how can we truly support them? So with that in mind, and GoDaddy's mission about trying to create and make opportunities more inclusive for all, Venture Forward began in 2018 to really quantify the impact that microbusinesses make, as well as to uncover the insights around the people who are behind them. To date, we have looked at over 20 million microbusinesses. We look at three things. We look at where they are, down to the zip code, such as there's over 50,000 microbusinesses in Tucson, yay. We look at how they impact economies, which I will take you through, and what's top of mind. So I'm going to share with you in the next few slides the power of entrepreneurship with data behind it, because our goal is to put this in the hands of people who can use it to inspire you as entrepreneurs and to inspire the advocates of entrepreneurs to support them better. There's going to be a lot of data on these slides, so feel free to take pictures, but the slides will be posted, so do not worry if you missed anything. Microbusinesses are growing everywhere. What you see on the left is city dispersions and concentrations, with the lightest being the most microbusinesses per 100 people. And on the right is the county distribution. What you see is obviously in urban areas, it's no surprise, but suburban and rural areas are growing as well. So who are we talking about when we say microbusinesses? We look at the digital entrepreneurs, meaning those who have a domain and a website, because who better than GoDaddy, who is there when an idea first becomes real, when they purchase that domain, when they set up that website, before they even registered as a business, and therefore are not showing up in traditional government statistics. They are small. 95% have fewer than 10 employees. They do generate income. This is an important piece because sometimes people think it's just a hobby or they're not going to make a difference. But they do. People rely on them for their main source of income, and microbusiness can support a household. 1 in 3 contribute more than 51% or are a breadwinner. 1 in 4 currently own more than one, meaning they need a lot of help. They're not trying to run websites. They're trying to follow their passion. And many, almost half, who currently it's their main source of income, it used to be a side hustle. This is our goal, is for people to pursue their passions and be able to do so easily. So let me take you through the 4 powers. Power 1, they can lift up communities economically. For every 1 microbusiness per 100 people in a county, that adds almost $500 to household median income. There's almost 7 jobs created for every 1 microbusiness entrepreneur because they are hiring directly for themselves, indirectly, or just bringing that money back into the community. They matter and have an outsized impact. Power 2, they close economic gaps. We know that there's a lot of challenges in traditional workforces, and we know that when you look at big companies, sometimes it's not always a 50-50 parity in gender distribution of leadership. 51% of surveyed microbusinesses in August of 2023 are women-owned. That's grown 10 percentage points, or actually 25% since pre-pandemic in August of 2019. About 3 out of 10 of these women business owners are actually the breadwinners in their home. We're also seeing it when it comes to Black-owned businesses. Black women are the fastest growing demographic in terms of new business, micro-business starts. And of the Black-owned businesses, Black women make up 68% of that. Power 3, the flexibility to work from anywhere. This is our dream, is to work on our own terms, on what we want, when we want, how we want. Micro-businesses are something that allow people to do it full-time, like 41%, or about 1 in 4 are full-time employed, and this can be supplemental income, it could be a hobby, they could be doing, and if you look at where they sell, it's anywhere. It's on their website, it's from their home, it's in a brick and mortar location. Power 4, happiness. Oftentimes when we think about the American dream, we say life, liberty, pursuit of happiness. It is that freedom and flexibility, and it is the pursuit of something you're passionate about. That is the number 2 reason people start a micro business when we ask. 1 in 3 is to support a cause or a hobby, a passion. Many want to be their own boss. And one thing is, we want to share this data, both as mentioned, for people to understand how to better support them and understand them, but also for those who are considering entrepreneurship to maybe be less risk averse, if they can, with data to show them that they're not going to be necessarily more stressed. Most of them agree, life is better as an entrepreneur. So, how do we help them? How do we empower these entrepreneurs who are powering our local economies? Well, it's actually not as big of an ask sometimes. Majority require less than $5K to get started. When we ask how they spend the first and most recent dollars, you could see the categories where they need help. To start, it's that website. And again, they want to be pursuing their passion. They're not trying to be website developers. As they continue, it's marketing. Marketing, networking, things like that are really helpful and beneficial. When we ask about challenges in general, again, it's back to marketing. It's also access to capital, and like we just discussed, it's not even that much to get started. When we ask how difficult was it to access the capital, you could see the distribution, that about 1/3 found very easy, 1/3 said medium, 1/3 very hard. We don't want it to be hard at all. Again, if we're all passionate about entrepreneurship and everything they bring, we want to make it as easy as possible for them. So let's talk Arizona. Let's bring it to the here and now. Arizona has thriving entrepreneurship. There are over 630,000 micro-businesses, 10% growth since pre-pandemic, and you can see the chart there. When we break that out to per 100 people, it's 11 micro-businesses per 100 people. And you could see the spot on the greater state map where Tucson is. But let's go deeper into Tucson. Tucson has over 50,000 micro-businesses and 8% growth. That translates to about 7 micro-businesses per 100 people. So for anyone in the audience who's an entrepreneur, let's give you a hand right now, because it's amazing what you're doing. It's truly my honor to be here on behalf of GoDaddy and this work, because it's coming to communities where you are out there taking the risk, contributing to your community, creating jobs. That's why we do what we do. One thing to note here, though, is areas of opportunity is what we always want to talk about, too. For around other cities with a similar population size, their average microbusiness density, or per 100 people, is just over 11. So meaning, with our 7, we can keep going. And so the goal is, again, make it less scary, make it more accessible. So all this data I've presented is available for download on our website. We publish it every quarter for free at godaddy.com/datahub. Why do we do it? Because we, again, want to put this to use. We want to quantify that impact, shine that light, and put it to work. Because without, again, understanding this oftentimes overlooked impact, it's not a complete view of today's local economies or even national economy. Some examples of how our data has been applied, in addition to being invited to speak at TENWEST, which is amazing, is it's been used by think tanks. It was used for how the Federal CARES Act money was distributed in Gilbert. It's been used for news, for, again, inspiration of why you should start. And we've been speaking with policymakers, chambers of commerce, economic developers. We're here for you. We're here to inspire entrepreneurship and help take ideas to success. And that's it. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Alex. Okay, we're gonna have a little bit of a conversation and then open it up to the audience for questions. Here's some water for you.
Thank you so much.
Okay, so I know how Startup Tucson has been using this data. So we work to support entrepreneurs, if you guys aren't familiar with Startup Tucson's mission. And we support all different sorts of micro businesses here in Tucson as they launch and grow. And we've been having conversations for years. Startup Tucson's 11 years old. And we always are in this economic development space, and attraction and retention were kind of the big things that were, and they're very important, right? It's like 3 legs of the stool. But you need this growth aspect too, and the kind of idea that you build your own, and the impact that these micro entrepreneurs can have on a community. And so when the data started to come out, I feel like we were telling that story, but we didn't have any of the data that we needed to tell that story in a compelling way. And so we've been following GoDaddy Venture Forward for a little while and using that data. And you gave a few examples, but can you expand a little bit more on how some of our community members might take advantage of the data to really propel that story forward and talk about the accessibility of entrepreneurship?
Absolutely. I think depending on how it is to be used, there's a couple things. For one is to make a business case. If you're trying to show, again, not just the story that we know, again, is heartfelt, not the story that makes it feel like it's a nice thing to do to support small businesses or the right thing to do to support small businesses. It is the smart thing economically to do to support small businesses. And that's one way our data can be used, is to show that economic impact on a county level. That is why we go down to zip code, and when we first started releasing our data, we focused on cities and counties and mayors. Because at a national level, it's amazing what the federal government has done, and especially since pandemic, to focus on small business growth, the backbone of our economies and communities, but is really the mayors, it is the local organizations like Startup Tucson that are in the fabric of the community and see it and can use it and can apply it. So that's why we focused on this level and not speaking about the impact on the national level. So that's one way.
Yeah, that's excellent. So what about our entrepreneurs in the audience? And I haven't told you where I was going to ask you this question, so a little bit of curveball. How can our entrepreneurs themselves use this data to empower their stories?
It's a great question. I think there's several different ways. I think one, on a personal level, I would hope that entrepreneurs feel less alone. One of the questions that we asked in the challenges was, what are your biggest challenges? One of the answers we offered to select was knowing what to do next. And we know that networking as well as navigating are key issues when you're on the journey of entrepreneurship. And it can feel lonely and it can feel daunting. And I hope that with what we share here, they can see examples of what other people answered so they feel less alone. They also can be connected to resources based on these answers so they get the tools to advance and propel their journey.
Yeah, that's great. So let's talk a little bit about your journey. So we talked about this when we did our little podcast earlier, but how did you come to be at GoDaddy, and what from your personal background and your professional background makes you so passionate about your job now?
Well, to go all the way back of kind of what's in my DNA and is the desire and passion to help and to bridge any disconnects and offer resources. I myself came to America with my family when I was very young, and we had to navigate a lot of ambiguity, not speaking the language, being economically challenged, and seeing the power of community and resources and people who advocated for opportunities for immigrants like myself. That inspired me to always figure out how to bridge that disconnect. And so I got passionate about platforms that offered that. Professionally, I then pursued, I started my career at Google because they made more accessible online marketing. And I really liked their approach of democratizing opportunity by anybody can get online and advertise and try something different. This is also why I love being on Innovation Day, because I'm all about how do we think differently to move things forward, to progress. I then moved forward towards Cisco, which was all about the power of connectivity, and literally, right, because Wi-Fi enables so much. But what drew me to GoDaddy is understanding how it's not just about being connected and the access to connectivity, but what you do with it. That to apply all my enterprise experiences to the entrepreneurs in the long tail who collectively are making such a big difference.
Yeah. Okay, let's see. I want to talk a little bit more about how the data maybe changed during the pandemic and what sort of spikes you saw or what you found that was interesting that came out in the data around microbusinesses.
I love that question because we began this initiative in 2018 and started bringing it to market 2019. Pandemic hit and small businesses became center of conversation. The data that stood out to us was, one, every time there were more grants in a community, more microbusinesses started. So we saw that spike, that infusion of capital makes a difference. Two, areas that had more microbusinesses saw lower unemployment rates and less low-income job loss. The jobs that are the first to go oftentimes in hard times didn't have to. We also saw a huge rise in women-owned businesses and black-owned businesses. The people that got pushed out of the workforce or left the workforce most often were the ones who were able to either supplement or pivot towards working on their own terms and supporting their families. And so we saw that throughout. I'm gonna pull an audible, call an audible. Clearly I don't follow sports. And I'd love to ask you a question in return of, you know, with Startup Tucson, with the founding of TENWEST, how did you overcome any fear of risk or adversity in jumping into doing this?
Myself or Startup Tucson?
You.
Okay. Well, my background is I'm a retired lawyer. We say that as I only practiced for a few years. And I was doing international economic development law, so really macro. We were working in developing countries across the world, and we were helping them reform their lending laws so that small businesses could have access to credit. So I've always been in kind of this small business commercial law space. But I loved that job. I traveled a ton. It was, you know, what I thought I definitely wanted to do out of law school. But I realized after I was in it for a little while that I was really disconnected with the person that I actually wanted to serve, which was the entrepreneur, because you reform a law and then you have to put it through Congress and it takes a while to pass. And, you know, we do these big, huge reform work, and then 3 years later, 5 years later, we'd finally hear the story about the woman in Ghana who used her oven as collateral for a loan to then hire her next 5 employees, right? And I realized I was missing that connection. The same time, my husband and I were falling more and more in love with Tucson and everything that this creative innovation entrepreneurship community has. My parents were small business owners. My grandparents were small business owners. My husband is an entrepreneur multiple times over. And I was finding that I just wanted to be there to support entrepreneurs that wanted to do this. It's a hard journey. It can feel like you're alone. I wanted to make an impact in my local community. And so I switched from high macro to very micro. And now Startup Tucson supports about 400 entrepreneurs a year, right there at the beginning. So right when they're first, maybe they already bought the domain, but they haven't built the website, or they have the idea, but they're not sure what their first step is. And that's kind of what the fabric of our programming is, really to help people get started. We work with a lot of people that maybe don't even call themselves entrepreneurs yet. We talked about that a little bit earlier, that have really, they've followed a passion. They've done it maybe out of necessity, or they were making something and then they were like, wow, I'm really good at this. And then now my mom's friends want to buy it, and then now I've sold a bunch and I don't have a business license and I don't know what to do, and I want to market and I love what I'm doing, but I want to turn it into a business so that I'm not doing it in addition to what I'm doing in my day job. And I think that journey to understanding that this is what I am really passionate about, and what entrepreneurship can do for our community, can do for an individual, can do for a family, can do for generational wealth, helping entrepreneurs overcome those individual barriers, access to their first capital, investment,
Right.
all of those different pieces, has really made Startup Tucson and my whole team excited to come to work every day and put on events like TENWEST. That was a very long answer to that question.
That's beautiful. Yeah.
Thanks, Alex. Okay, I'm going to open it up to audience questions. Do we have any questions from the audience for Alex about the data or the impact of micro businesses? Oh my gosh, you guys haven't had enough coffee yet. Okay, here we go. Jordan. Wait, I think Milana's going to bring you a mic.
So from your experience doing this across the nation, especially with cities the size of Tucson, I'm not sure about your experience there. And Liz, from your experience, why do you think we're 7 instead of the national average of 11 micro business owners per capita? I'm kind of curious what your hypothesis is, and if you have any best practices to encourage more economic development through entrepreneurship. We'd love to hear the feedback and ideas.
It's a great question. I'll say after attending the amazing event at JoJo's last night, it's definitely not for lack of interest or desire here. The amount of passionate entrepreneurs and entrepreneurs whose organizations are in support of in service of other entrepreneurs is very strong. And I think that's the right path in terms of the resourcing and the growth. It's also, in terms of data, we have something called the Microbusiness Activity Index, and it looks at 3 different things. It looks at an area's infrastructure, which is the availability of reliable internet, and also education levels, things like that, human capital. We look at participation, how many signed up, and we look at how active the websites are. So I would say, I'll follow up with you because I can look closer at that to dig into the data side of it, but it could be anything from the use of the internet, the availability of the internet, or just, again, that it's momentum that's growing. It is 8% growth since 2019 that's been in Tucson. It could just be that it started farther behind, and thanks to organizations like TENWEST, it's going to just speed up.
Yeah, I can comment just a little bit, Jordan. I think we have seen more momentum in the last few years. We've seen a lot more support organizations, Forge, Community Investment Corporation, stepping in to help support a lot of the work that we're doing to support entrepreneurs. Tucson was hit pretty hard by the recession, right? And so it took us a little while to bounce back from that, and I think that's probably evident in our numbers, but an increase kind of more recently. I think another thing that a lot of people are working on, that we talk a lot about, but that just takes a little bit of time, is our capital pipeline, right? So we've always had a really active angel group, and that's been amazing. The Desert Angels are an amazing resource for this community. We've had new venture capital groups come. They're also an amazing resource for this community, but equity investment is just not the right fit for a lot of entrepreneurs, and it's not the right fit for a lot of micro businesses. And it's been more recent. Community Investment Corporation, BIPOC Loan Fund is a perfect example of that. That started during the pandemic, that we've had more of this earlier stage capital available. These micro loans with Kiva, we have a Kiva hub run through Growth Partners. We have revenue-based financing tools. We have a lot of new tools that we'll talk about on Thursday as part of the Alternative Capital panel, plug, that are available to entrepreneurs, but we didn't have all those for a long time. And so when you think about as an entrepreneur progresses, they need different things at different parts of their journey. And we had some of those pieces, but we had some kind of holes. And so a lot of the ecosystem, TENWEST helps with that, Startup Tucson helps with that, all of our organizations, we have a Tucson Innovation Partnership that meets monthly to really try to make sure we are filling those gaps. And it's just taken a little bit longer to get that capital piece in place, but now I think we'll start to see more momentum in that space. And now it's about using platforms like TENWEST and all of you to tell other micro businesses and entrepreneurs that you know that there are resources for them and that there is capital available, and making sure we do those pairings correctly so that we can continue to accelerate those numbers. Any other questions from the audience? Okay, Odette.
I'm coming.
So, to your point, Liz, regarding the velocity of the entrepreneurial ecosystem here, I was wondering what the role of not having, or maybe a limited number of jobs, like the big companies that support jobs, is that impacting the number of people who decide to stay in Tucson after graduating from Eller, for example? Because, coming from the Pacific Northwest, a lot of people stay there because there's so many jobs. Amazon is there, Zillow is there, and then once they have experience in those jobs, then they end up staying, or they do their entrepreneurship project as a side hustle, versus what's the impact of Tucson? You have Caterpillar, you have Raytheon. I feel like a lot of students maybe are leaving. Is that correct, or?
That's a debatable, I'm looking at Brian because he's like, debatable question. I think students do leave. I think we definitely have a little bit of brain drain, but some of that is because, one, they're looking for different types of jobs, but two, they're just looking for a different type of experience when they graduate at 21. I didn't move here until law school. So I was a little bit older, and we fell in love with Tucson right away, as did a lot of people that were a little bit older. I think Tucson presents itself really well as a really livable city, a really great place to raise kids. So once you're past that, like 21, I need 4 clubs to be able to go to on a Friday night. No, I love the clubs. No disrespect there. I'm just saying, not necessarily. We don't have that type of nightlife. We don't have that type of experience. So I think some of those students do leave. I think we do have a lot of employers, and some of these are in the micro business technically category or just beyond a micro business, that do have opportunities for students, and we are missing some of the ability for the students to know about that. So I am really excited to share that this is like the highest enrollment we've ever had for student tickets at TENWEST. So yes, thank you, students that showed up today, because this platform really shows students what's off campus, right? Campus is beautiful. We love the university. We love all the professors that are here and participating, but the students don't necessarily always make it even to downtown, right? So they don't always make it into the community. They don't always see everything that Tucson has to offer. And so platforms like TENWEST can show them that even if right now is not the time, maybe later is. And one thing that we saw during the pandemic and kind of since is we have seen a lot of boomerangs. So a lot of people that grew up here that left for a little while, maybe they went to undergrad here and they went and they moved to one of those bigger cities. They lived there for a while. They got their first corporate job. They're ready to either launch their business here, grow their business here, or start their family here. And we're seeing, I can see some of them around the room right now, that they've brought those businesses back to Tucson and that now they're growing. So I think that will also contribute to that number.
I'll jump in from a national data perspective. We saw that in the last couple of years, obviously pandemic-induced, a lot of what they called the Great Migration. It didn't pick up, nobody liked that term, but it was called the Great Migration for a while because of so many people left these densely urban areas. They left especially the Pacific Coast. It happened a lot. And they moved to more suburban and rural areas. And we saw that their entrepreneurship would jump because usually the people leaving these areas bring that mindset, network, and share those ideas, and it builds up. So maybe that's what's also happening in Tucson as well.
Yeah, definitely. How many boomerangs we have in here? Yeah. See, we've got, even if you, and that's just like a microcosm of what we've seen more recently. And I will say what I love about Boomerangs is they come back so excited and ready to engage in Tucson, and they show up and they're mentoring, and it's just amazing that they're bringing that experience that they've found from another community, new ideas into Tucson, and they're ready to just jump in and get started. So I think that's a positive. Any other questions? Oh, in the back, Milana. She's such a good mic runner. This is Milana's first TENWEST.
Thank you.
Hi,
Thanks,
Milana.
All right. I really enjoyed seeing the data, and you spoke about the impact and the reasons and the struggles that small business owners run into. And a name like GoDaddy, pretty much everybody knows it. But what would you say in 2024 will be the main reason why small business owners will continue to trust GoDaddy with their business?
Well, our data is all about transparency, so I can only speak to our research initiative, and I would say in terms of why they would choose it, we have a lot of great and awesome products that are continuing to evolve to make it easier. But in terms of trust, I think it's initiatives like this that show that we put our money where our mouth is, in a sense, that we believe in the power of entrepreneurship. And this initiative and sharing this data is not about selling anything. You can go sign up with anybody else. We really want to share it with people who believe in entrepreneurs because we believe the world is better when people, to use an old tagline, is make their own way. But when they get to, again, live their version of the American dream, live anywhere they want, whether it's in a city or whatnot, and do what they want. So I think the trust is the goodwill of us trying to share it and empower entrepreneurs. And hopefully we build a relationship where this information resonates with someone like you, and you could think, GoDaddy means it. It's not just about selling, it's about supporting.
All right, let's give a big round of applause for Alex. Thank you again, Alex, for being here.
Thank you so much.
It's been really wonderful meeting you and Sandy in person, and I hope that you will consider coming to TENWEST every year as true fans.
Absolutely. Thank you, everyone.
Okay.